So in our geometry book, we're gonna make a table of contents. On our first page, open up your first page. At the top, put table of contents. We are going to be doing quite a few of them today. So we're going to put all the ones we're doing today and then we'll put them on the pages in just a second. So on the first page, we're doing point and line segment. On the next page, we're doing line and ray. And this will be on page 2. This will be on page 3. On the next page, angle and acute angle. Make sure you spell angle and not angel. And then we are doing right and obtuse angles on the next page. So those are all the ones we're going to do today. Okay, let's go to the next page. On the top of this page, we are putting point. Split your page in half. And at the bottom of the page will be line segment. So on most of the pages of this book, we'll be splitting our pages in half. So I want you to think of these geometry terms as like vocabulary words because that's basically all they are. I'm going to give you the word, I'm going to give you what it means, and then an example of it. So geometry, they are pictures that you look at. They are shapes, they are objects. You look at them, you either know it or you don't. Does that make sense? You're not going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, any of that stuff. You're looking at it. You either know it or you don't. It has to follow certain rules to be whatever it is. So point is pictured by a dot and labeled with a capital letter. So my definition says it's pictured by a dot and labeled with a capital letter. That means it's a dot And I can call this any letter I want to call it. You will see it called to any letter of the alphabet. I'm just going to call this one A. So whenever I say this, I say it as point A. So let's move to line segment. A line segment is a straight path between 2 points. This one starts and stops. It has a starting point, it has an ending point.
Isn't a line segment like this? With 2 dots at the end?
Right in there. Okay, so we're building on to each one of these. So we take our point. A point is a dot that has a capital letter. A line segment is a straight path between 2 points. So I have a point, and I have a point, and I connect them with a straight path. So it starts and it stops. It starts at a point, it stops at a point. That is called a line segment. Oftentimes, you'll see these labeled by the points. I think we had a warm-up a few weeks ago where it only had one letter for the type of line or line segment it was. You might also see that, but most times you're going to see it like this. Now, because I have line segment AB, that doesn't mean that's it. I could have other points on the line. I could have point Z somewhere on this line segment. I could have point X somewhere on this line segment. But when I say line segment AB, I'm talking about from point A to point B.
Could you go from?
So let's say I have point X on my line segment. But I'm saying line segment AB. That means this entire distance. It just happens to have point X labeled on there. If I say line segment AX, I'm talking about just this distance between A and X. If I said line segment XB, I'm talking about just that distance. Okay? So I want you to think of a line segment. All it is a bunch of dots that are drawn so close together that it looks like a continuous line. So when we label these, you're going to see a symbol of how you can label these. Whoops, spelled label wrong. So I'm talking about line segment AB. I'm going to put my 2 capital letters side by side. I'm going to write them a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to make a line segment right above it. And whenever I make my line segment right above those 2 letters, I don't have to put the dots at the end. This is how I can label it. So if I'm talking about this line segment right here, I can label it as line segment AB. This is a symbol that we can use. I can also reverse the order of those letters, and it could be BA. If you just have the letters, you don't have that symbol above it for your line segment, then it would be wrong. Or if you have the wrong symbol above it. Everybody's got that? I'm going to turn the page. On our next page, we're going to split it in half. At the top, line. At the bottom, ray. A line is a straight path between 2 points hang on, I'm going to change this word that passes through points and goes on forever in both directions. Okay, so we have our point again. This time I'm going to use X and Y for my points. My definition says it's a straight path and it passes through these 2 points. And it goes on forever in both directions. So these ones have arrows at the ends of them to show that this is a continuing line. It keeps going and going and going and going and never stops. So how can you keep these two, line and line segment, how can you remember these two? A segment is just a piece of something. When we watched that little video, Missin' and Flexent, that was just a segment of a bigger show. So it's just a piece of something. When you go somewhere and you wait in line and you might say, oh my gosh, that line goes on forever. The line goes on forever. It's a line. Goes on forever. Never stops. So how do we label this one? We have our 2 letters. We have our symbol above it, and our symbol we make a tiny line. We have to have the arrows at each end. Since it goes on forever in both directions, I can flip-flop the order of my letters. All right, and then we have ray. Ray is a straight path between two points and continues on forever in one direction only. Okay, so what does a ray look like? We have our 2 points. Again, this time I'm going to use W and S. And it says it's a straight path between them, but it continues on in one direction forever. So I'm going to start at W, and it passes through S because it's going to continue on past that. So how can you remember that one? Think of a ray of sunshine. it starts at the sun and it continues on forever in one direction. When you draw, like when you're a kid and you draw those pictures of trees and suns and whatnot, and you have the rays coming off of the sun, you're starting at your circle you drew, and you're making your ray come off of it. And it continues on and it touches the ground and everything else. So how do you label this one like you did up here? This one, it does matter how you put your letters. We're going to put W first and then S, and when we draw our ray, that shows that it's starting at W because there's no arrow above it there. And it's continuing through S. All right, continuing on, we're going to talk about our angles. So we talked about our certain types of lines, and now we're going to build on. So we're going to start putting them together. So the first one is just a regular angle. What a definition of an angle is. An angle is when two rays meet at one point. So when we draw an angle, you're going to see dots on them. You're going to see your points. And where they come together, that is going to be the shared point. So let's say this point is F, where they meet. And then my other ones, the one up at the top, I'll put D. And the other one, I'm going to put T. Now, when you use your symbol to write this, you're going to make like an angle, like a slanted L. And you're going to start with one of the outer points, but that F has to be in the middle. So this is angle DFT. Now I can reverse my letters, but I have to keep F in the middle because that's where they meet. Or angle TFD. When I see those three letters, it's like I have to search and I have to find it, and I look and I see that's the angle I'm talking about. It's easy now because I pulled it out of objects. When you will have to use it, probably on your test, it's going to be like street maps. And it'll say, maybe find angle XYZ, and then it'll ask you what type of angle it is. So then you have to search for whatever it's looking for. So let's talk about our different types of angles. We have an acute angle. And this one measures between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. And I believe all of you know that little circle that we put as a degree symbol. So if I have an angle and I use my protractor, which we will be using those in a couple weeks, and I measure my angle and it measures 75 degrees, is that an acute angle? Yes, it falls between those numbers. If I measure an angle and it measures 91 degrees, no, that's not an acute angle. It's a different type of angle. So we have an angle. We're going to talk about that one next. It's called a right angle. That is a perfect corner. Makes a perfect corner, like when the wall meets the floor. So there's my point. And I'm going to make this bottom line a solid line, showing my ray that continues on. I'm going to put a point on there as well. But I made this one a dotted line because this line is not there. That's my reference line. An acute angle can measure anywhere between that solid line at the bottom and where that 90 degree is. So it could measure here, it could measure here, it could measure really close to that 90 degree. All of those would be acute angles. Okay. Let's go to our next one. We're almost done. Our next one is a right angle, and I believe all of you know this one. At least you should. Also called a 90-degree angle. You have to be able to know if it says right angle, your brain needs to say, oh, that's a 90-degree angle. It means the same thing. So measures exactly 90 degrees. This is your perfect corner, is what I call it. There's going to be a clue that you'll start seeing that lets you know this is a 90-degree angle. That clue is this little box here. That little box means it's a 90-degree angle. So sometimes there's angles and it is a 90 degree, but it doesn't look like a 90 degree because it's tilted. You have to be smart enough to turn your paper or turn your head so you can see it. Sometimes too, it's easier if you block everything out and you just turn so you can see it. Sometimes our brains aren't used to seeing it this way, but we're used to seeing it this way. We have to be smart enough to turn the paper. Our next one we're going to hit is obtuse. This one measures between 90 degrees and, bless you, 180 degrees. So I have my solid line. I have my point for one of my rays. I'm going to make a dotted line to show my 90 degree, and I'm going to make a dotted line to show my 180 degree. So my obtuse angle is going to be somewhere in between the dotted line. So it's a solid line, and then the other one's going to fall somewhere in between the dotted lines. So it could be here, it could be right past that 90 degree, it could be really close to that 180 degree, but it's going to be in between here. Remember, you have to be smart enough to turn your paper. You need to see it. Sometimes you'll see a symbol on your angles. And it will be like an arc. Like this. So when you see an arc like that, it means it wants you to look at just that angle that's labeled. So it doesn't want you to look at this part of it. It wants you to look at this part of it. Yeah. Not right now. All right, one more. I know. One more. This one's called a straight angle. This one measures exactly 180 degrees. So it looks like a straight line. So you'll see it from one end to the other. So when you lay your protractor down, you'll see that this is 0 degrees, and then straight across, you'll see that's 180 degrees. Now, where do those numbers come from? It comes from a complete circle. If I do a complete circle, that's 360 degrees. 180 plus 180 is 360 degrees.
Have you ever done a perfect circle?
Yep.